The clock had just struck midnight when I shuffled into the hallway for a glass of water. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the old radiator and the creak of the wooden floor under my slippers. My daughter's door was cracked open, just enough for her whisper to seep into the stillness. Her voice was sharp, cold, stripped of any love that once tied us together. "Don't tell Mom, she won't live much longer." I froze. My grip on the glass trembled, water spilling over my hand. My chest tightened as if a fist had closed around my heart. She was leaning against her bed, her phone pressed close to her lips. I could hear the muffled chuckle of whoever was on the other end. My daughter's voice grew more venomous. "She's already weak. It won't take long. Once she's gone, everything is ours. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." I wanted to step in, to scream, to ask her who had replaced the little girl I once sang lullabies to, but instead, I stood there in the shadow of the hallway, every word piercing deeper. She spoke about me like I was a burden, a ghost that had overstayed its welcome. "She clings on, but she doesn't matter. She's practically dead already. We just need patience." Her words rang louder than any slap could. I pressed my hand against the wall to keep steady, my breath shallow. The air smelled faintly of the lavender soap she had bought me for Christmas last year, a gift I thought meant she cared. My knees nearly buckled when she said, "She has no idea. She thinks we love her. Pathetic." Memories flashed through my mind. Her first scraped knee when I kissed it better. The nights I stayed awake sewing her dress for the school play. The birthday cakes I baked even when I could barely afford flour. And here she was, plotting my absence as if it were a gift. I pulled myself away from the doorway, the floorboards groaning beneath me. She didn't hear me, too wrapped up in her betrayal. My hand gripped the banister as I descended the stairs, my heart heavier than my tired bones. I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the faint reflection of my lined face in the window. My daughter's words replayed in my head like a curse. "She won't live much longer." But as I sat there in silence, I felt something stir inside me. Not despair, but a cold, clear determination. If my daughter wanted me gone, she would soon discover that I wasn't as weak, as finished as she thought. And I wouldn't confront her with tears or pleading. No, I would stand quietly, watch carefully, and when the time was right, I would make her choke on every whispered word. The following morning, I moved through the house like a shadow, my every sense sharpened by the poison I'd overheard. My daughter, Lydia, greeted me with a sweet smile at breakfast, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "Mom, did you sleep well?" she asked, sliding the toast closer to me. My stomach clenched as I caught the faint smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. She didn't know I had been standing right behind her last night. She didn't know I had heard everything. I lifted my teacup with steady hands, though my insides shook. "Yes, thank you," I answered softly, watching her every movement. Her husband, Michael, entered the kitchen, his arm slung carelessly around her shoulders. He glanced at me the way one glances at a broken chair left too long in the corner, something to discard, not repair. "We should start planning, don't you think?" Lydia murmured to him, her voice low but not low enough. Michael chuckled. "Soon. These things take care of themselves if you wait long enough." My heart thumped, but I didn't look up. I spread butter across my toast as if my world hadn't shifted overnight. For the rest of the day, I observed them carefully. Every word, every glance, every whisper between them. Lydia's phone buzzed often, and she would disappear into the study, locking the door. When she emerged, her eyes carried that same hungry gleam, the kind that only comes from greed. She thought she had all the time in the world to rid herself of me. But I was not the frail, dying woman she painted me to be. I was 72 years old, yes, with silver hair and a cane at my side, but age had not dulled my mind. If anything, it had made me sharper, keener, able to see through masks like glass. 2 days later, I followed her quietly when she went to meet someone at the cafe in town. I stayed across the street, hunched behind the newspaper like some harmless passerby. Lydia leaned in close to a man in a dark suit, her voice low but urgent. "It's simple," she said. "Mom doesn't have much left. If we position things right, by the time she's gone, everything falls to us. Michael and I can finally start our life without her dragging us down." The man nodded, flipping through papers. My blood ran cold when I caught sight of what looked like documents, insurance policies, property deeds, signatures, my name, my life being passed around like a poker chip in some cruel game. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted iron. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were helping death along. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the family photographs on my dresser. My late husband's eyes smiled from the frame, and for a moment, I could almost hear his steady voice. "Don't let them break you. You know what to do." Tears blurred my vision, but anger steadied my spine. I began to play my part. At dinner, when Lydia served the roast chicken, I forced a weary cough, clutching my chest just long enough for her to glance at Michael with triumph. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked, feigning concern. I smiled faintly. "I'm fine, dear. Just age catching up to me." Her eyes sparkled, and I knew she was convinced. For days, I let them think I was weaker than I was. I stumbled a little more on the stairs. I left lights on as though my memory was slipping. I spoke softer, let my hands tremble as if life itself was leaking out of me. The more fragile I appeared, the bolder they became. Lydia whispered louder. Michael spoke more freely, and neither of them suspected that every night I wrote down their words, every day I watched and listened. One evening, I overheard Lydia tell Michael, "It won't be long now. She's fading. Soon we'll have the house, the accounts, everything." My blood boiled, but my face remained calm. In silence, I began to set my trap. I gathered small details, receipts, overheard calls, scribbled notes Lydia left behind when she thought I wasn't looking. I wasn't interested in lawyers or wills. No, my revenge would not be hidden in papers. It would be public, unforgettable, a humiliation that would strip the smug smiles from their faces. The plan formed slowly, carefully, like embroidery stitches weaving a pattern. By the time Thanksgiving arrived, I knew exactly how to expose them. Not just to me, but to every relative, every neighbor, every friend they had tried so hard to impress. They thought they were planning my ending. They didn't realize I was quietly planning theirs. Thanksgiving night arrived, and the house was filled with chatter, laughter, and the smell of roasted turkey. Family members bustled in with pies and casseroles. Nieces and nephews ran through the halls, and Lydia played the perfect hostess. She glided around the dining room, pouring wine and tossing smiles like confetti, her voice loud and syrupy sweet. To anyone else, she looked like the devoted daughter. To me, she looked like the vulture circling her prey. I sat quietly at the head of the table, a place I insisted on keeping, though Lydia had suggested once that I should sit somewhere less obvious. Tonight, she didn't argue because she thought I was fading. I let my shoulders slump, my breaths shallow, my hand trembling slightly as I lifted my fork. Every gesture was deliberate, feeding the illusion that my time was slipping away. Michael raised his glass. "To family," he said. The words dripped with irony, but the others clinked their glasses without hesitation. Lydia smirked across the table, her eyes flashing with a private victory only she thought she knew. As the meal carried on, I waited. I listened to their laughter, their whispers, their arrogance dripping from every word. And then, as dessert was served, I cleared my throat. The room quieted. "I'd like to say something," I began, my voice soft, fragile. Lydia leaned forward, pretending to be supportive. "Of course, Mom," she said sweetly. I reached for the envelope I had tucked beneath my plate, my fingers steady despite the performance. This year, I wanted to bring something special to the table. I laid the envelope in the center. Lydia's eyes gleamed instantly, and Michael's hand twitched eager. "Oh, you didn't have to," Lydia crooned, already imagining deeds and checks. The others watched curiously. Slowly, I opened it and began to read. Not a blessing, not a thank you speech, but a list. A careful, detailed list of everything Lydia and Michael had said and done in the last weeks. Their whispers at breakfast, the meeting at the cafe, the phone calls about insurance and property. Word for word, I recited their plotting, their greed, their certainty that I was almost gone. Gasps rippled through the table, forks clattered. A cousin covered her mouth in shock, and Michael's face drained of color. Lydia tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "She's confused. She's making things up." I looked at her steadily, then pulled out the small recorder I had hidden in my room, pressing play. And there, in her own voice, Lydia whispered, "Don't tell Mom. She won't live much longer." The room froze. Every guest turned toward her, their faces a mixture of disgust and disbelief. Michael stood, his voice shaky. "This is taken out of context." But even as he spoke, the walls of their facade crumbled. A neighbor muttered, "Monsters." My sister-in-law hissed, "How could you?" The children stared at their parents with wide, confused eyes. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply sat there, calm and deliberate, watching as Lydia's carefully constructed mask shattered in front of everyone she had tried to impress. "You see?" I said, my voice steady. "I may be old. I may be slow, but I am not blind, and I am not weak." Lydia tried to gather herself, reaching for my arm. "Mom, please, let's not do this in front of everyone." Her voice trembled for the first time. I pulled my arm back. "You made your plans in whispers. I chose to reveal them in the open. Now everyone knows what kind of daughter you really are." The room buzzed with whispers, judgment heavy in the air. Lydia's cheeks burned red, Michael's hands shook, and their arrogance dissolved into desperation. They begged, not for money, not for inheritance, but for me to stop speaking, to stop exposing them. But I wasn't done. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, and looked each guest in the eye. They wanted me gone. They plotted for my death while smiling at this table. Tonight, you've all heard their voices. You've seen their greed. Remember this moment the next time they pretend to care about family. Silence followed, broken only by Lydia's sobs and Michael's muttering. No one moved to comfort them. Not one hand reached out. The shame clung to them heavier than chains. When the night ended, I walked out of the dining room not as the frail woman they thought they controlled, but as someone who had turned their cruelty into their undoing. Lydia and Michael were left at the table, red-eyed, humiliated, begging for a forgiveness I never promised. Wait, they had wanted my end. Instead, I handed them the beginning of their downfall. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.